So it's Tuesday, and I'll tell you what, there are two projects that I really want to do, and I'm not going to be able to do either one of them. One, for a lack of parts. Two, for a lack of, well, the money to buy the parts or sponsors. Number one being the cheap gravel bike that's just like a commuter bike now. Let's be honest, it's not a gravel bike anymore. I want to put a shifter on here, but I don't want to put just any shifter on it. I want to put a thummy shifter on it. Is the thummy shifter for this derailleur. So it's not like it's a particularly expensive project, like $25 for a thummy, like indexed and friction thumb shift lever from Microshift to go with their Advent rear derailleur. Could make this thing a really fun 1x9 wide range commuter bike. So Microshift, if you've got someone in your office who's watching this video, reach out to me at the email in the about page of my channel. We can make this happen. The second thing, number two on the list of something that I would really want to work on today, is that Schwinn mountain bike right there. Now, of course, if you've been following the channel for long enough, you do know that I've got a brand deal with Schwinn, which of course does mean I have a bunch of their bikes in the shed. My favorite one out of all the ones that I have is the Schwinn Moab one. It's their highest end hardtail mountain bike that you can buy. And honestly, I like riding it more than I like riding the felt, but the felt has the serious lightness going for it. So what I want to do with this bike, of course, when I'm allowed to, and the deal allows me to do it, is get some parts for it to lighten it up. This bike truly doesn't need any of those things. I just do it because I can't leave things alone. So dreams, aspirations, lack of funds, and lack of sponsorships aside, what we are going to work on is this thing here, probably the most favorite bike of the channel, the Rawnstercross. But more specifically, what we're going to work on is the nail polish painted fork off of a Jamis cross bike many years ago. This thing at this point is just like a little bit too beat up for me to feel okay about putting on the newly polished Rawnstercross frame. I want to get all this gunk and garbage off of it and just give it like a new coating of flat black paint and then have it all get beat up together so that this doesn't look more beat up than that as we move along. This video is not sponsored by Trimclad, though it is the second time I've used your product in my video, so I feel like payment is sort of obligated. Speaking of payment, go to the Teespring store and get the shirt that's got this logo on it, would you? Or just go to Patreon and put money in there. Now, I would love to just paint over everything that's there, but I kind of do want this to turn out at least somewhat half decent. So everything does need to kind of come off of it, get scuffed up, and get a new layer of paint. Ideal Bikes, now closed for good. I think this fork might actually be like cracked or broken a little bit. That's all raw carbon right there. But I've ridden it like that for so long that I'm not worried about it. So I've got all the high points knocked down to a spot that I'm happy with. I think once the paint gets laid onto it, you're not going to see any of those kind of like imperfections that were there before. Maybe in the dropouts a little bit, but am I worried about the dropouts? No. I am, however, worried about paint getting on spots that it's not supposed to get onto. So, easiest way to take care of that is just with some paper. And typically painter's tape, but I don't have painter's tape here with me, so I'm going to use electrical tape instead. And my crown race doesn't end up with a bunch of extra paint on it. Next my brake posts. I must have some spare hardware here that I can throw into these threads just to make sure they don't get filled up with paint. It's super windy out, not ideal painting conditions, but content needs to be made. It's a pretty lucky dry December day to be doing this, but the coverage seems to be working out quite well. And the fact that this is fast dry, not to just shout out Trunclad again, but I get to add a couple more coats every 15 minutes. So I'll let you know how that's going. I'm gonna let that dry a little bit, and I'd like to do maybe 2 to 3 total coats. So in the meantime, because these are the wheels that the Rawnstercross is going to be using from this point forward. These are the Velocity Quills that I laced up to the Easton hubs. They used to be tubulars. Now it's got a tubeless rim brake setup on it with a nice wide rim and some nice Easton hubs. For the 1 year that I've had these, I'm very satisfied with the way that they are working and the fact that since cross season last year, they're still holding air. I think this actually might be due to a couple different factors. One of which, of course, is because it's just a good design, so it holds air really well. See, when I originally built these, I did put them together with electrical tape as my tubeless tape. And while it held for like a week or a week and a half, the day that I was shooting the video to bring my bike into work so that I could fly out that night, one of the wheels just went flat while it was sitting in my office. And I kind of knew immediately what the problem was. So that day was kind of a mad scramble to put something together that was going to allow me to fly to nationals, but more importantly, have air in my tires for when I actually showed up in Ontario. Because of course I was flying with my bike without it being packed. I was just going to ride from the airport. We ended up very last minute using the hazard tape that you'd put on like heavy equipment. I definitely wouldn't recommend going out and trying to buy a roll of this stuff in place of any sort of tubeless tape. It is definitely not cheaper. But for the pinch and the time constraint that I was in, we were able to kind of make this work. And honestly, I kind of wish I could make all my tubeless setups out of this stuff, but it really wouldn't be. I don't really plan on racing this bike as a cross bike really ever again. Probably most of its time is going to be spent on the road. So I'm more interested in a bigger, kind of smoother tire tread instead of a 33 mud tire. I've got a tire in mind. I'm going to kind of mount it on here. I'm just going to see what it looks like in the end. And that tire is the Continental Contact Speed. Not a tire you hear of very often. I happen to have it because of the Schwinn sponsorship deal. Unfortunately, this iteration of the tire is not the tubeless version. In fact, I'm actually not even sure if you can get it in a tubeless version, but I do really like the way it looks. Anyway, very cool looking tire. When it's on the bike, I think it's gonna look... Can't wait to see what they look like on the bike. Oh. So when it's windy outside, the latch that is built for the lock, it will close on the door and I can't get out. That's what this pencil is for. Now, unfortunately for the entertainment value of this video, I do need to practice some restraint in putting this thing together at all, because this is not dry. And I have a wildly bad habit of trying to put things together when paint is still wet, putting either fingerprints, smears, or basically just taking a big chunk of paint out of the work that I had just done. So today, I'm not going to do that. This is the end of the video. There will not be any more or any less to it. That is all going to be next week. So, The last like 30 seconds of this video are not going to be that. I'm not lying. I'm not going to do it. I know it might seem like I'm lying and that like I'm jokingly going to put it together. I'm not going to do that. I'm not putting it together. But here is kind of the wet final product of what was just shot. Dry in some spots, and then it will be very flat in color, which will look really good compared to what it was. The old style, everything beat up, looked cool, but I think starting fresh is also a fun thing to take on. So yeah, maybe next week we'll put these on with the newly painted, well-cured paint fork. We'll just kind of see what it all looks like. I'm still very much on the fence what I want to do with this bike drivetrain-wise. I am sort of leaning towards having it be a geared bike, but that could change at any moment. That's it for Tinker Tuesday. Don't be afraid to take any spare money that you have that you don't know what you want to do with and use it to support the channel at any of the links below. Thanks!